So my plans were absolutely to be a software engineer, dreaming of kind of going abroad, so on and so forth. The HDFC brand is a brand which has been built over a period of time. Today, if we are what we are, 60 to 70% of the job is being done by the brand. We have to ensure that we don't dilute this brand, which means we have to do all the right things. When I joined the organization, there were just 3 of us in HR. We didn't even know how many people existed within the company.
You mentioned 90% adoption in frontline. I haven't heard about that kind of adoption.
People who get certified, so there are different types of certifications: gold, silver, bronze, based on how they've done and what they've done. We see higher retention and higher productivity amongst people who get certified versus people who don't get certified. You tell people how to kind of go and sell to a customer, but then we have an AI tool wherein the learner can record his video, upload it, and then the AI basically gives you feedback in terms of whether you understood, whether whatever you told the customer, is that right? Did you pitch it well? Were you able to kind of close the sale well, so on and so forth? It gives you proper feedback, and now it's part of the certification process for the sales guy. Don't just expect everyone to kind of be a 5 on 5 or a 10 on 10. That's utopian. That never exists in any teams in any setup.
Sometimes somebody at senior management does not display the values or does something which is a violation of those values. And how you deal with such cases.
You may be the best performer, you may be at whatever level within the organization. If you've done something which does not pass the smell test, or based on objective investigation, if we believe that you've done something which is not right, an appropriate action will be taken.
Welcome. My name is Prasenjit Bhattacharya. I am the founder of Great Manager Institute, and I welcome all of you to the leadership podcast of Great Managers League. In the league today, we have an extraordinary person, someone who has crafted the culture of a very large and very complex organization. I have with me Vibhash Naik, the Chief HR Officer of HDFC Life. Vibhash, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to kind of be on a chat with you.
We have, of course, known about HDFC Life, and it's an amazing, successful case study. And you have been there now for more than 14 years.
That's right. In fact, this is my second stint with HDFC Life. So in the initial days, I was there for a period of almost 3 years, and now 14 years with HDFC Life.
Oh, wow. So I'm sure, like you, there will be many other examples of Ghar Wapasi in HDFC Life. What I would like to know for our viewers is the person behind the professional that you are.
Sure.
So help us to know you by starting with, with yourself, with your journey,
Sure,
your formative years,
sure,
and what influences you have had.
So, I started my career in 98, Prasenjit. I did my Bachelor's of Commerce, and along with my BCom, I did my Advanced Diploma in Systems Management. So my plans were absolutely to be a software engineer, get a software job, dreaming of kind of going abroad, so on and so forth. I happened to meet one CHRO at that point of time. And that was also the time when you're thinking of doing an MBA, what kind of an MBA, so on and so forth. My dad got me introduced to a set of people. He used to work for a pharma company. And he said, why don't you meet some senior professionals and get to understand, different professions, different jobs. So I ended up meeting one CHRO. And he told me about the HR profession. And that's how I thought, not a bad profession to kind of be in. And that's how I got into HR as a profession. So I did my Masters of Labor Studies. 98 is when I started my career. Initial years, I worked for a IT company, Atos Origin. It used to be a 100% subsidiary of Philips at that point of time. And then it got merged with Atos and eventually became Atos. Software was booming during those days, and I loved being a part of that organization. Eventually joined HDFC Life. Okay, so this was my first stint with a startup in some sense.
Wasn't it called HDFC Standard Life
Yeah.
or something like
Yeah.
that
So
in
it
those
was
days? Yes.
so HDFC and Standard Life Insurance Company of the UK.
Yes.
This was a JV between HDFC and Standard Life. Standard Life had a 26% stake. We were the first private life insurance company.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So 2001, in fact, this year we'll complete 25 years. First private life insurance company. LIC was the only player that existed in this space. HDFC was the first company to kind of get this license, JV with Standard Life. When I joined the organization, we were hardly, I think, 100 odd people in the company. So it was a small, nice, cozy setup. It was fun being a part of. In fact, when I joined the organization, there were just 3 of us in HR. We didn't even know how many people existed within the company. So, absolutely starting from scratch. Okay, we had to, build the foundation. In fact, lay down the bricks for in terms of every process. You had to write every policy. You had to write every process. We were growing at a fast pace. We were opening branches across the country. We were hiring people. It was a sunrise industry. So sunrise industry, a startup, it was good fun. And when you were hiring people in insurance at that point of time, there wasn't any other insurance company apart from LIC. So it wasn't like, you could hire people from LIC as well. There were a set of people from LIC who moved into private life insurance at that point of time. But when you're building up your distribution, we had to meet people from across industries, FMCG, white goods, all kinds of people, And that was fun because every time you met people from another industry, there was a story that you would hear. And, when you're interviewing people, while you are assessing them, judging them, selecting them, you're also learning a lot in that process. And this was also a job wherein I traveled across the country because we were setting up branches across the country. So, you're almost living out of a suitcase, traveling almost 20-25 days in a month. So the first 2-3 years was all about just scaling up.
Mm-hmm.
And it also meant hiring. As I mentioned, every process was being laid out at that point of time. So it was good fun. You're young, 2-3 years out of college. You're working for a established brand, sunrise industry, and you get to dabble into almost every aspect of HR, whether it was operations, compliance, recruitment, performance management, anything and everything you did. Okay, and so it was great fun. I hear people or youngsters at times cribbing about, number of hours of working. We really stretched ourselves, but not a day that you didn't enjoy working at this place.
You were virtually creating a new industry in private sector, at least.
Absolutely.
Which didn't exist. And today, the number of people who have insurance in this country is far, far more than what it was during that time, isn't it?
Actually, ironically, the whole sector was privatized because government wanted to increase the penetration of insurance across. So, after 25 years also, when you look at in terms of how much, what the penetration has been, it's still a fairly under-penetrated market per se. While the private life insurance companies' market share has gone up, LIC's market share has kind of dropped. But there is still huge scope in this country for us to insure more and more and more people. That number of people today that you still see are underinsured.
So this was your experience of starting a new business.
That's right.
Of course, you had the advantage of HDFC brand name. Even at that time, it was a well-known brand. So from a 0 to 100 journey, you came back again. And is it after a break?
2000. So this startup experience, as I call it, was good fun, was great fun. Eventually, I again joined another organization that was also a startup because Lehman was starting their operations here in India.
Yes.
Even that was fun. Post that, I worked for a company called Religare Macquarie. Macquarie Bank of Australia and Religare had a JV on a wealth management space. Even that was a startup experience. Eventually, 2011 is when I came back to HDFC Life. When I came back to HDFC Life, we used to call it a 11-year-old startup. Okay, and I'll tell you the reason why I'm saying what I'm saying. When you from almost 100, 200 employees in 2001 when I had joined, in 2011 we had close to around 14,000 employees. Okay, so the company had grown at a very fast pace. From having probably 7 or 8 branches in larger cities, the number of branches had increased manifold. But the processes had not necessarily kept pace with the growth of the organization. And what typically happens is when you grow at such a fast pace, your grade structure needs to be relooked at. Your processes were built for a smaller setup. Okay, when you become large, you need to re-engineer the entire process to manage scale. Okay, some of that stuff had not happened. Our technology stack had to be reviewed and relooked at. So we were 11-year-old company, much larger. Okay, were we geared to kind of, or were our people processes geared to kind of, manage scale? Possibly not. And that was the challenge. So in some sense, those processes were not as matured as you would have wanted them to be at that point of time. And I'm not blaming anyone for it. It happens when you are, growing at a breakneck speed. You have to kind of, relook at your processes. So now the challenge was, how do you basically ensure that you re-engineer your processes, bring in interventions that can manage scale, and eventually kind of, go to a level where you are now building an organization or an HR organization that can take care of 30, 40, 50,000 employees. That'll come with growth that's coming.
And your employee size now would be?
So today, as we speak, we've got close to around 40,000 employees. And in this process, a couple of things happened. We got listed in 2018. When you get listed, obviously, your responsibilities become that much more different vis-a-vis when you are unlisted. Plus, we had one acquisition that we did in between. So we acquired another life insurance company called HDFC Life. So many things happened during this 14 years phase that I'm talking of, but interesting.
So there are 2-3 things that come to my mind straight away. First of all, a lot of people say that the kind of people who enjoy the 0 to 10 experience of a startup don't enjoy the 100 to 1,000 phase, because this is very, very different, both the phases. Now, of course, the other thing about insurance industry is, I remember during the time when you guys started, a lot of my colleagues would come and tell me that please join insurance. And I would ask why. They would say, that's the only industry where for 10 years they're not going to ask you to make profits. And however, when you came back, it was a different story altogether. It was not the startup experience. It was not that we are investing and we don't want profits right now. All the challenges that you have in a large complex organization were now there. How easy was it to come back to this organization for you?
So Prasenjit, this is something that I often quote and I tell my people as well. Organizations behave like humans. Okay, and just like a human being would have certain phases, a childhood phase, a teenage phase, an adulthood phase, okay, an old age phase, so on and so forth, organizations also behave, or their DNA is like that of a human. So we had our childhood phase, which was 2001 to 2008. 2008 to 2017, 18 was a different phase. And 2018 onwards, it's a different phase. And in every phase, you got to relook at in terms of what and how you're doing things. What works in your childhood phase will not work in your teenage phase. What works in your teenage phase will not necessarily work in your adulthood phase. The question that we keep on asking ourselves, and we keep on reminding ourselves, we've been successful teenagers. When we got listed also in 2018, it was the most valued private life insurance company. So in all probability, all the stuff that we did or the strategy that we basically implemented, is something that the market gave us a thumbs up on. But I think we were cognizant of the fact that, now when we are entering our adulthood phase, stuff that we did during our teenage phase will not hold us in good stead for the future. So the question to ask is, 2030, how will our company look like? How large will we be? How complex will the organization be? And are we gearing up to basically manage this complexity? Okay, and it's very important for us to kind of, while we keep on improving things or we keep on embarking on new journeys, it's equally important for you to kill certain things that you did earlier but possibly are not relevant now. Okay, it's like cleaning up your house. While you're bringing in some new things, I think it's equally important for you to kind of discard some of the old things which possibly don't make sense now. If you become very emotional about some of those things and you hold on to it, then it becomes very difficult for you to, then you just add to the complexity. So you have to declutter stuff by killing certain things, and you have to embark on new things, explore white spaces. You have to orient yourself to kind of do things differently.
So for the benefit of our audience, explain by giving one or two examples of what was something that you actually had when you were in your childhood or in the startup phase, which you had to give up, and what did you adopt?
So I'll tell you a few things that, one example that comes to my mind. See, when you're starting up, okay, when you're in your early days, okay, it's important for you because there was nobody in the insurance space per se, right? So you are hiring people from all different types of industries. When you get people from diverse backgrounds, from diverse industries, if you want them to be successful, you have to enable them. To enable them, you have to give them knowledge and skills. There are very few people in the industry who actually knew about insurance. Okay, so you had to build a training team. You had to train the trainers and then impart this knowledge to them. Okay. So essentially, the mode of learning for your people, or the source of training, is a bunch of sales trainers. When I say a bunch, it's a fairly large team of around 40, 50 odd people that you built, and their job was to impart this knowledge and skills to all the people who kind of join the organization. Then you grow on to kind of have around 15,000 odd employees. This training team consisting of sales trainers, product trainers, so on and so forth, from 100 becomes possibly 250, 300. From 15,000, you become 25,000. From 25,000, you become 40,000. We can't keep on just increasing the size of the training team. It's not a scalable model. And these trainers are supposed to not just train your 40,000 employees, but they're also expected to train your distributors. Distributor strength, which could be in the range of around 1 lakh.
Mm-hmm.
So now what do you do differently? Okay, now if you keep on increasing the size of the team, I think, as I mentioned, it's not a scalable model. So we said, okay, in 2010, it started with an online learning modules. Okay, so we created a content team that would, create content which is online. But then you have your sales force, which is distributed across the country. And most of these people are not necessarily people who come to office, because they're sales guys and they are kind of spread across, they're meeting their clients, so on and so forth. Then came the idea of learning on demand. Okay, anywhere, anytime kind of learning. 2016 is when we embarked on a mobile learning journey. Okay, we were one of the initial organizations in 2016 who possibly scaled up this whole mobile learning journey.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the adoption was fairly high. You had to create content which would be appealing for an audience like that. By 2019-20, we said, look, we've already matured on this mobile learning journey. Now we need to personalize the content that gets rendered on this mobile journey, and it needs to be engaging. Okay, so again, because the company had become so complex, you couldn't have just the same content being rendered to everyone. So depending on if you're in HR or if you're in agency sales, what you see could be different from somebody else who's kind of, in bank assurance or some other channel, so on and so forth. So we matured on that journey. Even the content type that we had earlier, they were just videos and cards. From there, we started using different types of content, comic strips, cards, a lot of innovation happened around that. Eventually, we said, look, role plays happen. Skill building, for example, it happens in a classroom wherein you kind of, do role plays, so on and so forth. We started using AI. Today, as we speak, AI is being used wherein you teach something in a classroom, you tell people how to kind of go and sell to a customer, but then we have a AI tool that we basically have deployed, wherein the learner can record his video, upload it, and then the AI basically gives you feedback in terms of whether you have understood, whether whatever you told the customer, what is that right? Did you pitch it well? Were you able to kind of close the sale well, so on and so forth? It gives you proper feedback, and now it's part of the certification process for the sales guy. Now we are graduating further and saying that what, even this needs to be more conversational. It's like you're talking to a phone, and the phone again talks back to you as if the phone is a customer, and it's a conversation that's happening, and then it gives you a feedback in terms of how that sale process has happened, so on and so forth. So from having trainers to online learning to mobile learning to personalized mobile journey to usage of AI, I think with scale you keep on deploying different tools, and that's how
I think that's fascinating. And I'll just touch upon those specific challenges, digital being one of them. But before that, if you were to take a big picture view, when you were 15,000 and now you're 40,000, so between 15,000 employees to 40,000 employees, what were some of the biggest challenges that you guys faced as an organization? And then we shall talk about the role of your function, HR, in some of those challenges.
So insurance is also one of those industries where the churn is fairly high. Almost 85% of the population would consist of sales professionals, and feet on street would be close to around 75%, and that's where the churn happens. So you end up hiring a large amount of people every year. Okay, hiring for scaling up, at the same time some replacement hiring that happens. So what ends up happening is you end up again hiring people with diverse backgrounds from different industries, different companies, so on and so forth. When these people get into the organization, okay, people come with their own baggage. Okay, now for us, the brand HDFC is a very, very strong brand. It stands for something. It's got a DNA. Okay, there is an identity that the brand has got. HDFC Life also has got if HDFC Life was an individual, it has got a personality. Okay, it has got certain value systems. Those value systems in turn would translate into behaviors. If you have certain value systems, that's how it emanates into behaviors. How do you ensure that just because you are getting more and more people from outside, you retain the culture that you want to hold on to? How do you ensure that some bad practices don't come in, or some undesired behaviors don't become a part of the organization, and then you start to lose the whole HDFC DNA just because as an HR professional or as an organization, you've not tried to kind of hold on to the culture that makes HDFC what it is. So that is a big challenge, and I would presume that most organizations who are scaling up, becoming larger, bigger, how do you ensure that you retain that culture at scale?
I think that's amazing, because at least in frontline, in your industry, it's possible that up to half the people in some years are new every year, right? And yet, the essence of the brand and the core values cannot change year on year.
Yeah.
So help us understand, how does HDFC Life build that culture?
So just to kind of demystify culture, okay, so that it's easy for us to kind of understand, and that's the way I look at it. Culture is nothing but sum total of all the behaviors that you see within the organization. Okay, if you see more of the desired behaviors, you have a good culture. If you see more of undesired behaviors, obviously you have a bad culture. Now, what is desired and what is undesired could differ from person to person or from company to company. Behaviors are based on your value systems. Again, if we were individuals, all of us have got certain value systems. Based on those value systems, we behave the way we behave. Same is the case with organizations. We've got certain values. There are behaviors which are defined, And if you see more of those behaviors, obviously you got a good culture. Now there are 4 elements if you want to ensure that you are basically ensuring that that kind of culture exists within the organization. One is, does everyone in the organization know what your value systems are, and have you defined those behaviors well? Okay, so first is you need to first define it. You need to be very clear as management in terms of what your values are and what behaviors you want and what behaviors you don't want. The second most important piece is communication and reinforcement of these behaviors. You can define them, you can have them on the walls. It's not going to make any difference to anyone till the time you don't communicate, reinforce. Okay, so you need to kind of just keep on communicating till the time people get to know that, okay, this is what this organization stands for. And I'll come in a bit in terms of how we do that. Third is, we need to reward and recognize people for the good behaviors, at the same time punish people for the wrong behaviors. Okay, so there needs to be a mechanism for us to policies, processes to ensure that the right behaviors are rewarded and the wrong ones are people. There are some punitive action if you do certain things which are wrong. And last is, we need to measure. Okay, now all these 4 elements are important if you are very serious about ensuring that the culture that you want to, if you want to ensure that you stay true to your culture and your values, so on and so forth. There's a lot of work that we do in terms of communication of our values and behaviors. Okay, we've got our EC members or executive committee members being given certain geographies. They are chief value officers. So as a chief value officer, I may be responsible for East as a geography. There could be another peer of mine who would be responsible for South, so on and so forth. So within that geography, there would be a set of branches that we have. For a set of branches, I would have certain value ambassadors reporting into me. Again, these value ambassadors are senior people at the level of VP and above who are given a set of, it's like a constituency that's been given to you. So one is responsible for a set of branches. In each branch, in turn, we've got a value guardian. So it's like a tree, a chief value officer, a value ambassador, and then a value guardian. Okay, and what we've done is, based on incidences that keep on happening within the organization, around each of our values, we've created content. Okay, this content could be in the form of case studies, there is content in the form of videos. So there's a lot of content that we've built around it. And there is a set frequency in which these CVOs, VAs and VGs have to communicate this to their respective people who sit out of these branches. A VG is supposed to do a VG activity or epic activity, as we call it, once in 2 months. A CVO has 2 town halls in a year. A VA also would have 2 town halls in a year. Okay, and so that is one way in which we basically communicate or reinforce the right and the wrong behaviors, okay, to people. We also measure every branch on a branch value index, as we call it. So while I think everyone is aware of their targets and what they need to do, so on and so forth, we also have a separate index called a value index. Okay, and based on all the 5 values that we have, we've identified measures, hard measures in terms of, excellence, for example. What does excellence mean? What does customer centricity mean? Okay, and for that branch, based on data, we get to know in terms of which are the branches which are at the bottom of the chain, so on and so forth. We also have a leaderboard for value ambassadors. So the value ambassadors who do a good job of reinforcing these values, and if their branches are at the top on their branch value index, then it's like a leaderboard saying that, okay, as a value ambassador, you seem to be doing a good job, bad job, so on and so forth. So while, there is one part of the organization that's focusing on your hard metrics and targets and business, so on and so forth, there's also an organization, the same set of people, who are trying to ensure that these softer things are being reinforced all the time so that people understand that this is what we stand for. And once it becomes a fulcrum, then people who don't become part of this DNA get ejected. So if there are people with wrong practices, they can get into the company, they get to know that, this is something which is not acceptable as far as we are concerned.
I have a question with respect to the branch value index. Is there a correlation between branch value index exhibiting the values and branch performance? It could be branch level productivity and or even employee retention. And if not, how do you deal with any such dichotomy where there is a branch manager with excellent performance whose branch value index is low?
No, it can't happen. See, we've got 5 values.
Yes.
We call it EPIC.
Yes.
Excellence, people engagement, integrity, customer centricity, and collaboration. Okay, now it cannot happen that on excellence you're poor, but your branch is doing extremely well. Excellence would mean in terms of how the performance of the of people in that branch, how are they performing, a percentage of people who are above a specific rating, so on and so forth. There are some other KPIs also related to
Understood.
excellence. Customer centricity, we measure number of customer complaints. We also measure number of good customer stories that come out of that branch. Integrity, we measure in terms of number of actions that we've taken because people have demonstrated poor integrity. So how many cautions, warnings, terminations have happened in that branch per 1,000 employees, so on and so forth. So every value has got a metric attached to it. Okay, basis which we come up with a index. Okay, so it cannot happen that a branch is doing extremely well, but all these indices are poor. What we also do as CVOs is we identify the ones, we call them red branches. If the branch value index is low, we ensure that our efforts are more indexed towards those branches because that's where we know that there's an issue and we need to fix it. That's where the communication rigor is much more as compared to the rest of the branches.
And every once in a while, in all organizations, at least some of the best workplaces that we have studied, we know that sometimes somebody at senior management does not display the values or does something which is a violation of those values. And how you deal with such cases is really sends a signal to the rest of the organization.
Absolutely non-negotiable, and we are very, very clear about this. You may be the best performer, you may be at whatever level within the organization. If you've done something which does not pass the smell test, or based on objective investigation, if we believe that you've done something which is not right, an appropriate action will be taken. Okay, and I'm not saying about will be taken. There have been instances in the past wherein we've had some senior people, who came from another organization, assumed that, this is okay for us to kind of do. When we found out, when we investigated and we found out, something like this is being done and it's not right, we have taken action, including termination in some such cases. So, it's very, very important for you to send the right signals. It cannot happen that, for junior people, there are certain standards, and for senior people, there are, the standards are different. The HDFC brand is a brand which has been built over a period of time. It enjoys customer trust. It enjoys the trust of the shareholders. We keep on reinforcing this to people within the organization. Today, if we are what we are, 60 to 70% of the job is being done by the brand. Okay, if we get a premium in the market today because of the brand that it is. Okay, so for us, I think we have to ensure that we don't dilute this brand, which means we have to do all the right things.
I think I have had number of examples of people in organizations like yours who are very successful, particularly in sales, wealth management, and so on and so forth, who assume that they are the only ones driving that success, and then when somebody gives them an offer at twice the salary, very soon they realize that the performance in a big brand company and the performance in a no brand company is very different.
Absolutely. And we've had so many cases of people who kind of gone to another organization with possibly a 40-50% increase in compensation, And when you go there, and if the brand is not a strong brand, these are HDFC is a strong institution. As I mentioned, it's not a brand that's been built overnight. Many people have worked, many leaders have spent their sweat and blood to ensure that this brand is what it is. So I, the message to everyone is you don't have the right to dilute the brand. If you can take the brand to the next level, do that. Okay, and I think important for people to understand that you need to be grounded, you need to be modest, you need to show humility, and that is something that defines us as HDFC, and that's what.
I think two lessons that has come out very strongly in this conversation. One is the entire change in the scalable model, which is driven by technology and digital. And I'm assuming it's not just for your salespeople; it is for your employees at all levels, including customers, obviously. And the second one is how building the right culture and building the right kind of brand ambassadors is a core job of HR, not
Absolutely.
just the marketing department.
Yeah.
And
True.
If I were to summarize some of the key achievements that you have had as the chief HR officer, apart from technology and building culture, is there anything else that you are really proud about, sir?
I think we've been able to build a fairly robust learning ecosystem within the organization. Maybe it's the same thing that I'm kind of again repeating. So I just, you spoke about technology. Another example that I'll give you again, which is related to learning and development. One way of teaching people is push learning. You nominate people for a learning program or a training program, or you make it mandatory for them to kind of take up some learning courses, so on and so forth. Another beautiful thing that we experimented, and it's working beautifully for us within the organization, we said, look, learning styles are different. You have diverse set of people. Their motives or the way they learn or the way they are very, very different. Let's do one thing. Let's create an ecosystem. In that ecosystem, we will provide them with a platform. Okay, that platform could have a set of curated courses. Some of them could be online, some of them could be offline, so on and so forth. And have a pull for those training programs. Okay, wherein we said, if you complete a course successfully, in some sense, it's like getting credits. Okay, so you earn as many credits as possible by picking up the relevant training programs for yourself. And then eventually those credits will get linked to your career growth, so on and so forth. Okay, so the more the number of credits, it kind of, helps you for a better increment, for a promotion, so on and so forth. It's not just about, it's like saying that, why don't we offer people a platform? Different people can pick up different things based on what's relevant for them. You don't have to kind of, all the time take the mantle of training people, assume that they're matured enough, and democratize the entire learning process rather than, taking the mantle in your own, on your own shoulders in terms of, teaching and enabling people, so on and so forth. So both push and pull.
But do you see that maturity coming to employees now? And do you think larger number of employees?
Feet on street, with a salary of around 3.5 lakhs, we've got more than 90% adoption. I was very skeptical initially when we did something like this, but our adoption is close to around 90-95%. And the ones who get certified, so there's a whole gamification of this entire learning, as I call it. Provide a platform, curate certain courses, categorize the courses into basic, inter, advanced, let people kind of pick up, complete the course on their own. Okay, we have assessments that happen twice in a year. See in terms of, whether they were able to apply this or not. And based on which courses they've picked up and how they've scored in the assessment, give them points. And eventually redeem those points in the form of promotion, so on and so forth. See, in the absence of a carrot dangling, people possibly wouldn't have done it. So the trick is make this thing available for people and also have a carrot dangling at the end of it for doing what you wanted them to do. Okay, then it works. And there's another platform that we use quizzes.
Mm-hmm.
Quiz as a form of learning. See, yeah, at the end of the day, you're dealing with young professionals, Gen Z. Okay, the old method of just having number of sessions is not a scalable model. It's not a scalable model because there are only so many number of people in your HR team and training team. So the trick is democratize it. Let people do it on their own. Even things like picking up experts. So if I'm an expert on something, on some topic, how can we leverage this individual to teach a set of people? Okay, peer-to-peer learning, as we call it. Our job is to provide that opportunity, provide that platform, and ensure that we are able to leverage all these things.
No, this is very, very fascinating, and I can continue to go on and on because you mentioned 90% adoption in frontline. I haven't heard about that kind of adoption so far.
I'll tell you another thing. People who get certified, so there are different types of certifications: gold, silver,
yes,
bronze, based on how they've done and what they've done. We see higher retention and higher productivity amongst people who get certified versus people who don't get certified.
Now that I can vouch for because in the work that we do with organizations like yours and others, we also have managers who are certified as great people managers. And we did that even though it is just a 1-year study, and we found that there's a marked difference in retention of people who get certified. And we also figured out that one reason could also be that they have faster career tracks.
As
more number and as a percentage, more are getting promoted.
Sure.
Compared to others. Yeah. So therefore it's a virtuous kind of cycle. And what I hear from you is that even Gen Z and millennials, provided they are not being forced and pushed into doing something, and they're given the choice, and with enough democratization, they are keen to pick up the...
And there was a time, Prasenjit, when we used to push people to kind of complete certain courses.
Correct.
And the more you push, okay, then people try to game the system. Because somebody's pushing us and we have to do it, we will do it. But then you try to kind of game the system, find some ways to kind of do it. That's when we said, okay, fine. Push strategy, maybe we should for certain things. But let's kind of adopt and check in terms of what the pull strategy is. And I was pleasantly surprised, honestly.
I think this is an amazing case study, and we should publish this as a separate case study altogether in terms of how do you get people to adopt digital learning methods. And before I end, I can't resist asking a few set of what my colleagues have given me as rapid fire, where we don't give you enough time to think. But let me start by asking the first question. Is there any leadership lesson that you wish you had learned earlier?
Initially, I would expect all my team members to hit the ball out of the park. Okay, so, you are passionate about doing something, you want to achieve that, and you expect all your team members to actually be equally passionate about that and hit the ball out of the park. Okay, and what would happen is you would create a lot of stress in the process. Eventually, I think with time you mature and you understand that, look, that 10% of the people who will be as passionate as possibly you are about that goal. The rest of the people, they may be average, but they're critical and important for you to kind of get the work done. Not everyone will have the same passion and the same energy. So work with them, okay? And don't just expect everyone to kind of be a 5 on 5 or a 10 on 10. That's utopian. That never exists in any teams in any setup. Okay, so I think make peace with this reality. Understand that all of them are equally important. Leverage them for what they are good at and get the work done. Okay, maybe I think I should have learned this early on. I think, but you possibly push, you fall, then you understand that, look, this is what the reality.
That's amazing insight that you have pointed out.
In fact, sorry to cut you. Another very important lesson is, as leaders, you want everyone to work on their areas of improvement. I think with time, you start realizing that, let's leverage people for their strengths and let's not bother them all the time to kind of, work on their areas of development, because that can kill their confidence.
And I also realized that not every area of development is a showstopper.
That's right.
So if it's not a showstopper, don't waste your time.
That's right.
Because you're better off leveraging the strengths. If not human resources, what would you have done? Where would you have been?
It's a difficult question. Now, we've been more than 25 years in HR. But as I said, when I started off, I wanted to be a software engineer. Maybe I think that is something that I would have liked to. I'm quite logical also in my approach. In fact, my team tells me at times that I'm a little too clinical and left-brained for an HR person. But so maybe I think software engineering is something that I would have done.
I was just talking to a software engineer before coming for this podcast. And he's not a software engineer anymore, but he's creating products because he's able to give the right prompts.
Sure.
He's done prompt engineering and all of that. So he says, I'm safe because I can give the right prompts. So the question strikes me is, how much time will AI take to give the prompts which today you are giving to build the software that we are building? So nothing is changing as fast as the software industry. So it's a very fascinating world right now. What is the one word that your team will use to describe you?
Passionate.
Yeah.
And maybe always thinking out of the box.
And I think I'm just going to end this conversation on that particular note, the realization that you talked about. I look at it as the difference between doing and being. And most often in our work lives, we are used to appreciating people for what they do. But there are also a whole bunch of people who actually add value to the organization by being there, even though they are not the best performers.
Sure.
And this ability to reconcile both, knowing when the glass is half empty and therefore being dissatisfied, and knowing when to be grateful that the glass is half full. I think that comes with age and experience. And
that's right.
I think that's a great realization. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks. It was a pleasure.
Such a pleasure
talking to you.
Talking to you.